Is this discussion too cool for cats? Hey guys, MasakoX here. I'm back from my little house escapade and so far it's going okay. There will be more to come in the following months and I can't wait to show you the progress that is made on my new office that will be shown in pictures and video as we go on, and I'll be more than happy to share them with you. But that's all very well and good, that's about construction. What the topic is about today is the complete opposite. Destruction. Gods of destruction, to be more specific. These entities were revealed to us back in 2013 when the likes of Beerus and Whis descended from the heavens and came down to earth proclaiming that they were going to be fighting the likes of the Super Saiyan God and to eat Bulma out of house and home. Well, they were going to have a very tough job ahead of them because Bulma's got a pretty big home. Despite the simple premise of, Beerus just blowing things up and then eating things in the process, there is a lot more to the God of Destruction than meets the eye initially. As well as his brother, the God of Destruction for Universe 6, Champa. With my buddy Haverok helping me with the research, we are about to embark on a new little mini-series for the channel that I'd like to call Gods in Detail, or GoDs in Detail, where we will look at all of the Gods of Destruction, as well as the Supreme Kais in some cases, and try to investigate the hidden meanings behind their characters, their appearance, their origins, everything. We know a little bit on the surface, but I'm sure there's a lot more depth than Toriyama is letting on. Of course, we are going to start with the GoDs that we are the most familiar with. Beerus and Champa. When Beerus was first introduced, he was an immediate hit. However, he wasn't originally meant to be this unusual and eccentric. According to Toriyama, when he first received the concept art and details for the God of Destruction in the Battle of Gods movie, the original picture that was being painted was an entirely opposite figure, nothing like Beerus at all. The God of Destruction I initially received was a malevolent dark character. For a twisted guy like me, I took the stereotypical image you'd think of from the name God of Destruction, then went ahead and reversed everything, leaving only his fearsomeness. My style is to first tear down the image, then think up at the contents. Also, there was the request to have the whole cast appear since it was the first animation in a while, so that's how the contents came about. There would be no sense of freshness if it was just a strong enemy making his appearance, so I thought I'd make a change in that pattern. Dragon Ball, or rather Goku's basic rule, isn't defeating an enemy, but winning, so he doesn't mind whether it's a good guy or a bad guy. I had a somewhat Egyptian image for Beerus. A common notion is that Beerus, as well as his brother Champa, were modelled primarily off of one of Toriyama's pets, in this case a Cornish Rex cat. Now whilst Cornish Rexes can be quite skeletal in appearances, the fact that they have so much hair is a little bit of a misnomer for Beerus and Champa, because if you look at them, they really don't have any hair. Okay, granted, they do have the long pointy ears, I'll give them that. And it's also not the first time that Toriyama's character designs have been derived from felines. In fact, one of Toriyama's pet cats from the 80s is believed to be the origin and actual details of the character that we know as Korin. This makes total sense to me because I believe that Toriyama, being a man of convenience, would have probably seen his cat walk into his office one day and think, you know what? That cat kind of looks cool. I can make him a character. Yeah, why not? Let's just do that. I mean, it wouldn't look weird because there are talking animals in Dragon Ball all the time. But one thing's for sure, it's quite clear that Beerus and Champa are modelled off elements of Egyptian mythology, and most notably, the Sphinx. Also, back in those times, cats were seen to be sacred, as were dogs. Animals, or at least hybrids, counted for many gods within Egyptian culture, and this might actually stem the whole idea of the gods of destruction for Toriyama. Beerus and Champa, they were derived from Egypt, so why not you just make a character who's a god of destruction and an animal? The earliest known feline goddess was that known as Mafdet, and her gimmick was to protect people from things such as beasts like snakes and scorpions, as well as any other creepy crawlies that might be scuttering about the sands. But that's not the only thing that she was known for. She was also seen as a representation of legal justice, the law, virtue, as well as capital punishment. Capital punishment, eh? Does that sound familiar at all? Now, credit where credit's due, Haverok picked up on that one. Also, Mafdet was connected to actually protecting places of royalty, as well as the common folk. Like I mentioned before, protecting anybody from anything venomous. It's also believed that Mafdet actually carved out the hearts of her enemies and presented them to the pharaohs in some kind of triumphant fanfare, as in, "Ooh, look what I did! It's all for your honor, pharaoh!" It's much like how house cats present their prey to their human masters to just go, "Look what I did! Be proud of me, now feed me!" Believe me, I know exactly what that's like, as well as anybody else who's ever owned a cat. But Mafdet isn't the only goddess that's actually derived from felines. The most commonly known one is one known as Bastet. Originally, she was just a run-of-the-mill lioness, but around the time when Egyptian religions and cultures actually coalesced into one entity, because different regions had similar but not identical gods, she was transformed into a cat-human hybrid, a protector, that one we all know and love from many movies about Egypt. She was often seen as a true defender of the pharaoh, and as such, there were many festivals held in her honor. And these weren't tiny little dinner parties either. We're talking about people coming from far and wide to celebrate her good nature. 700,000 people here, and that's back at a time when 700,000 people was a hell of a lot of people. Feasts and celebrations were common in Egyptian times, as well as Roman times and pretty much any kind of time. But Egypt in particular, they were absolutely bombastic. And what does our favourite godly kitty cat like to do? Feast and celebrate the fact that he's so awesome. And if you don't like that, then he will just probably destroy you. He feasts on all the delicacies across the universe, and if they don't make the cut, then bye-bye civilization with his capital punishment abilities that I talked about earlier. Now there is another cat-like deity to take account of. Sekhmet. She too was a protector of the pharaohs, but unlike Bastet and Mafdet, who were actually trying to do general governance and overall oversight actually within the chambers of the pharaoh, she was the goddess that stood by the pharaoh's side as he went into battle on any other arduous missions. So to pay Sekhmet back for her good nature, there were many feasts to celebrate the end of a war. These would signify that combative destruction had come to an end. But if there aren't any battles to be had, then there's usually a festival at the beginning of every year that is actually made to appease the likes of Sekhmet in times of peace. The Egyptians would dance and play music in order to placate Sekhmet's fiery temper. They consumed heroic quantities of wine so as to impersonate the likes of the people that were so drunk and intoxicated they were able to save the world from internal crisis from the fact when Sekhmet decided to actually try and destroy humanity one time many years ago. Again, does that sound like a certain god of destruction and a certain type of birthday party? There are stories leading to the possibility that all of this debauchery and drunkenness might have something to do with the fact that one time the Nile ran with blood and it was up to Sekhmet to try and actually drink all of the overflow water to prevent a flood. So whatever way you actually wish to believe, there was a lot of alcohol involved. So as you can see, Egyptians certainly love their cat god related festivals. And this leads me to a really interesting fact that concerns the likes of Beerus and Champa as well as any type of feasts and festivals. It comes from this little tale that Haverok found in his research. Ra sends Hathor as Sekhmet to destroy mortals who conspired against him. In the myth, Sekhmet's bloodlust was not quelled at the end of battle and led to her destroying almost all of humanity. So Ra poured out beer dyed with red ochre or hematite so that it resembled blood. Mistaking the beer for blood, she became so drunk that she gave up the slaughter and returned peacefully to Ra. You know, beer, as in Beerus. Beer is something that has been around for centuries. It's one of the oldest drinks known to man. It dates all the way back to the Mesopotamian era. And for the longest time, believe it or not, beer was safer to drink than water. In particular, in London in the 1700s and 1800s, there were many cholera outbreaks concerning water. You would rather drink beer and get intoxicated rather than actually drink the water. And to bring everything back to ancient Egypt, every single worker on the Great Pyramids of Giza were actually supplied with a ration of 4 to 5 litres of beer every day. Even though beer is actually a diuretic and that makes you even more dehydrated, or maybe they gave them the beer so that means they wouldn't think about their troubles and that means that placate them so that means they'd work harder. It's all a bit confusing. Today we know beer as a drink that you have socially, or something to be imbibed whilst you're actually dabbling in some good old-fashioned sports ball. Which might explain why Beerus is the better spoken of the two brothers. Now we've been talking too much about Beerus, we've got to turn the attention to Champa. Where does his name come from? Obviously it's derived from champagne, the sparkling drink that came from the Champagne region of France many centuries ago. Dating back originally to the 16th century, champagne eventually became a drink of the aristocracy. Okay, here's an interesting fact. This was a very early example of marketing! The makers of the drink wrote off the back that the fact that many of their customers came from royal blood. So if you were to buy champagne and drink it with your friends, it showed that you were important. So naturally word spread that champagne was a bigwig drink, and if you drank it, you were someone to take note of. Today, it is often used to commemorate victories in sports or any kind of social achievement or actually life milestone. Which actually reflects on Champa's nature. He has a very luxurious and competitive streak. Well, competitive in comparison to his brother at least. Also, because Champagne's quite bubbly, it has a very explosive nature, much like Champa's very short temper. You think Beerus is a hothead, Champa's 10 times worse. Now lastly, we need to talk about the fact that these guys are twins. Twins have very interesting connotations in many different types of mythologies, not just ancient Egypt. In some mythologies they're seen as malevolent, and in others they actually seem otherworldly and supernatural. They would share some kind of special connection that would either bring them even closer together, something that regular brothers can't do, or actually drive them apart even more in some kind of fierce rivalry that nobody else would get unless you're a twin. Then of course there's the very common trope in media that there is such things as a good twin and an evil twin, and one may be bad and the other is self-divine. Like the mythical twins Gilgamesh and Enkidu, one was normal and the other was wild. This might explain why Beerus and Champa actually keep each other around despite the fact that they hate each other's guts, or at least they seem to on the surface. It acts like a kind of détente, like Apollo and Artemis, Romulus and Remus, Luke and Leia. Oh no, wait, hang on. All in all, the whole idea of Beerus and Champa revolves around the fact that they are twins and that they are closely linked to Egyptian culture in food, decadence, and destruction primarily. If you have such a tempestuous origin, no wonder you're going to be associated with the likes of blowing stuff up, consuming inordinate amounts of food, and just generally being really much of a warmonger. It's okay though, I absolutely love cats, and I love these guys. They're so funny and so iconic, and the perfect example of why I think Toriyama has endured for so long, over 3 decades. He's kept breaking the norm and throwing it out of the window. Now the whole idea that cats were to be worshipped was not just because they act all snooty and believe that they should be worshipped, which to be fair they do that all the time. It's because they provided a service. They were the ones to actually hunt down vermin such as rats and snakes and actually drive them away and kept people safe at night. They proved useful to the populace, and much like how the cow is sacred in India, cats were sacred in Egypt. Their prowess in elimination is something that is actually reflected in the likes of Gods of Destructions from Universe 6 and 7. Kind of. Once again, big thank you to Haverok for all of his help with this research. He deserves a round of applause. No? So what do you guys think? Did you like this opening episode of GoDs in detail? Has this gotten you interested in ancient Egypt? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!